because I do 1,300 crunches and sit-ups 4 times a week.
What's a dose? Can you translate for us?
Winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Ernie Els.
Alrighty, everyone. Well, we've had a little bit of a sabbatical from this golf podcast. Life has thrown some hurdles in, mainly in my direction. I won't go into the details of those, but I'm very pleased to say we are through the dark part of the tunnel, and we decided we needed to resurrect this podcast. Joined today by the one and only Jacques de Villiers. How are you, Mr. JDV?
What's up? How's it, Terence? Yeah, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I think have we decided to officially rename it, or is that is the phoenix being renamed, or are we going to just let it continue to fly under the Desperate for a Shank banner?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good segue, Jacques. And it's probably fortuitous that Carl isn't able to join us today, because I know he was very attached to the original podcast name, Desperate for a Shank. But we did some very broad consulting with some high-level branding experts globally, and they just didn't feel like it had the stickiness that we were looking for. And also the angle of the podcast that we're sort of moving into, which is more talking about just general golf experiences and that around South Africa and around Africa. And just to announce to everyone that the new official name for this podcast is The Goat Track. And I guess it's a bit like two wolves and a sheep voting what's for lunch, because I think me and you were on board with that, and Mr. Hoffman was keen to stay with D4AS.
Yeah, look, what I like about the Goat Track is I think there's a couple of layers. It's a bit like an onion. Obviously the connotation of a not so great golf course as a goat track. Ladysmith Country Club comes to mind there. But then also I sort of was giving it some more thought once you proposed the name, and you've got like the greatest of all time sort of golfers like a Tiger Woods, so he's the GOAT, and then also like a track. This is an audio medium, normally you'd call those tracks. So the GOAT Track has got sort of a dual meaning. So I like it.
I concur with that. I like that as well. And the additional layer that I had in my mind there was that we are certainly not professing ourselves to be PGA certified experts, and so we could almost consider ourselves a bit of a goat track when it comes to quality of courses and input. So we want to encourage some good banter around the golf experience of South Africans and in different parts of South Africa, and that isn't certainly not limited to professional golf by any means. So I think we've seen from the feedback we had from our podcast on KZN halfway houses, which was very mixed, and a lot of opinions came out of that's kind of more of the angle that we want to go for. So to move things along, we're starting off a kind of a series, I guess, that we want to focus on, which is kind of unique and different golf courses that we want to do like kind of deep dive podcasts on. These are places that maybe not everyone's been, but places that are initially very sort of near and dear to our hearts, and places that we think are kind of well worth visiting for kind of a unique golf experience. So we're going to be trying to do kind of maybe one of these a month. And today we are talking about a little 9-hole gem of a golf course in the central Drakensberg. It's about 45 minutes from the town of Winterton, and that is the Cathedral Peak Golf Club. Some of you may be familiar with the Cathedral Peak Hotel, and obviously the sort of the history behind that, and the fact that it's one of the most scenic places to visit in the Drakensberg. But we are certainly going to be chatting a bit about the golf course because it's a very, very interesting little 9-hole layout. Jacques, just as an initial thoughts, what's your sort of initial feeling when you think about Cathedral Peak Golf Course?
Well, I think firstly the point that a lot of people might not know the golf course, but you might actually be a member. so I think it's ratio of members to people who've actually played the golf course is pretty lopsided. Yeah. So yeah, for those of you guys who are members at Cathedral Peak that have no clue where it is or what it's like, this podcast is for you. Yeah, my initial thought, Terence, is, you sort of think about it as a country course. What would like any sort of little town that you go through, be it sort of King Williamstown or Underberg or one of those places, is it that sort of a course? And I think genuinely it is, but in an absolutely incredible setting. So that's the feeling I get with Cathedral Peak is a country course in an unbelievable setting. I think if you were to separate the setting from the course, obviously the elevation changes does a lot with the layout, but for what it is and for what it's working with, it's beautiful. But yeah, 6,500 members at Cathedral Peak. So based on that, I mean, there's probably more members at Cathedral Peak Golf Course than most established golf clubs in KZN. But we can get to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really really interesting thing about this course is the fact that it is a course that has, benefited from this new sort of remote membership model, which has become very popular in South Africa. And yeah, I mean, in large part, that's thanks to a gentleman called Matthew Mayo, who has initially saw an opportunity to kind of link up these sort of virtual. He started off creating sort of virtual golf clubs, and then realized they needed to link up with kind of real courses. And so originally started off membership at Drakensberg Gardens in the Southern Berg, and then Cathedral Peak was one of the next courses that was brought on board to that model. And from my last discussion with Matthew, it is indeed the biggest course by members in South Africa, which is kind of amazing. And as you say, the ratio of members to members who've actually played the course has to be the lowest of any club in the country, I would imagine. But yeah, I mean, let's kind of get into it. I think you outlined sort of some of the geography there of it. I think for me, there's two things that make this course really special. I think the first is just its actual location, being deep, sort of up in the foothills of the Drakensberg. For those of you who've played sort of the champagne sports of the world, you realize that is a beautiful setting. But this course is it has a sense of being much closer. You really feel like you're at the coal face of the mountains, and that's simply because of the land that it's situated on, and they were able. And I guess, Jacques, you could probably give me your input this from your environmental with your environmental hat on. I would imagine it would be very difficult to build another golf course like this so close to the Drakensberg mountains in this day and age, but this course is here, and I guess that's also what makes it special.
Yeah, I think based on the environmental impact, I mean, I think golf courses generally have got a bad rap, and probably for good reason. The other course that comes to mind with that similar situation where I can't see them building it today would be Beechwood, and obviously a couple more. But yeah, I think with what they've got and what they've done, and I mean, bearing in mind that this wasn't a sort of big name course architect, that the way that they've plotted this course out through the terrain is actually really special. There's some really cool, quirky holes. There's some really good holes. Maybe just to say, you and I got the privilege of playing it a couple of months ago, Terence, where I think I was triumphant over you in a match play. But that's as an aside. But yeah, I think it is a special, and definitely a place worth visiting. Maybe not for an out and out sort of golf tour, but if you want to take the family for a lekker weekend away. I mean, the Cathedral Peak Hotel itself has so many activities and is really a lekker spot. That I mean, if you are a golf enthusiast, it's definitely worth putting the clubs in the car. Because my feeling was, Terence, and I know they've got you. I'm reading the website about how much it costs to play and the rest of it. I don't know where you would pay that, because when we went out there was sort of no one around other than other than a couple of people doing sort of hikes or a run. I was a bit taken aback at first, because there was a bunch of turds lying all over the place, where I thought, sheepers, is this where like everyone and their dog goes to like relieve themselves, until I realized that it was a bunch of baboons and not human turds that we were looking at every hole. But yeah, it's a really lekker space, and a very fun layout.
Yeah, so I mean, let's get into the course a bit. I mean, it's a 9-hole layout which has alternating tee boxes, essentially turning it into to an 18-hole layout. Certainly, some of the holes play very, very different from the back 9 tees, and we can get into that a little bit. But at the gist of it, it's a really great 9 holes, and so sort of offers you that option of it's a really nice complementary activity to have if you're in this part of the Berg. You can go either crack like a 9 holes early in the morning or in the afternoon after maybe going for a hike or something. So I view it as a 9-hole layout, but as I say, I think Jacques, when we played. I think the first day, I think we played the front 9, and then I think on the second day we played the other tees, and that's also a nice way to do it, is to just break it up that way. The course has it has sort of 4 very, very and I think you touched on this earlier. What makes it a really special layout is the land that it's on. It has 4 really different parts to it, and that's based on the kind of all the different elevation changes that you have. So the sort of the first and the 8th and the 9th holes are sort of on this sort of very flat-ish piece of land just below where the clubhouse is. And then you kind of sort of do a bit of a hike up to the second green, and then you've got the 3rd hole, which sits on a completely different plateau all on its own. And then you kind of traverse down the 4th and the 5th holes, which run sort of parallel to the river, and they're on a separate sort of terrain. They have completely different holes to the rest of the course, and then you sort of have this upper plateau with the 6th hole kind of taking you up to the highest sort of top corner of the course, and then you kind of proceed your way back down to that plateau. So, I mean, just starting out, the front 9, you kick off with a what I sort of always think is a great way to start any golf course. It's sort of like a friendly handshake of a hole. It's not terribly demanding, kind of off the tee.
Friendly par 5.
Yeah, it's a short par 5. And there's a bit of a choose your own adventure element to it, because you have a very wide first fairway, but you also have the 9th fairway, which runs on the left hand side, kind of in the opposite direction, and you can hook one out over there and still have. Yeah, carry on.
You've got to. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with that one, you almost, the more you bite off, the easier it gets. In terms of your place to miss. And again, I don't think that's a comment so much on the hole itself, but the land that they're working with. But certainly, I think if you take, generally you would be saying on a par five, take as much club as you dare. It'll make your next shot a bit easier. Whereas here, I think the less club you take, the more shit you bring into play. So definitely the play on one is driver and possibly, try and go as far left as you can, but try and avoid the sort of the trees. But I think it's as you say, it's a very cool starting hole. I think certainly for the bigger hitters, it's not a par five. I mean, I'm not a long hitter by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm very comfortably taking an iron into that green if I had a solid drive.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's certainly not the it's certainly not one of the most interesting holes on the course. The kind of funny thing about the hole is that you actually have a better angle to the green if you hit onto the 9th fairway, unless you find yourself behind the tree, which is right in the middle of the 9th fairway, which we can get into later, which is an interesting feature. But the way the green is angled, it's actually almost easier to hit from the 9th fairway. But be that as it, it's a friendly kind of start. I think there's some additional land. When you look on it on Google Earth, they possibly could have pushed that green up further to the right, into that corner, which might have made it a bit of a longer hole. But it's a nice sort of friendly kind of handshake hole. And then I don't know. Then we proceed on to the second, the par 3. What's your thoughts on that hole? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, all the par 3s. I think what really stands out for me about this course is the par 3s, and I think this is the opening one. And I say all the par 3s. I mean the two of them. but I mean, I suppose what's nice is that you've got the first par 3 where you're hitting onto an elevated green, where the second par 3 you're hitting down to the green. So it's two very different types of shots. Although I'd probably argue you're taking the same club to both. I mean, probably a pitching wedge on both of them. I like that top one. I do think that you could probably get out of jail free if you take enough club. I know that when I played it, every single time I took sort of a bit more, and you hit it onto that back behind there, as long as you're not getting caught up in the scrub, leaving yourself an impossible shot coming back, you're generally going to get a favourable bounce back onto the green, and it's a pretty easy par. But it's cool. I mean, that's what I do like about the two par 3s is that you are dealing with elevation changes on both of them. It's not just sort of laid out there for you. You've got to hit over quite a big, almost like a little valley on the second. And then I think maybe as a general comment, the greens, rather than dealing with the sort of green complexes on all of them, they're all very much quite flat. But I was very pleasantly surprised with the quality of the greens. I don't know what you thought, Terence. I thought they were, very, very well kept. They were pretty quick. They were pretty consistent. I do have a comment on the flags, which were tough. I mean, essentially they were pieces of PVC pipe stuffed in the hole with like maybe a little rag or something if you're lucky, but generally they were just a piece of PVC pipe. Which, yeah, if there's a debate about whether you should keep the flag in or out when you're putting or going for a chip shot, at this course it's absolutely most certainly take the flag out, because I think the pipes pretty much take up 90% of the entire hole. I don't know if the ball can get in there with that pipe in there. But yeah, maybe they can use some of that sweet cash from their 6,000 members to spend a couple of $100 to get some new flags.
Yeah, look, I just can't imagine how inexpensive it would be to update all the pins and just put some decent flags on there. I mean, it's amazing just visually the difference that makes. I mean, I know you essentially the flag's just a line for you to aim at, but yeah, there's something about just having a nice flag with a nice, put the course logo on there. It just makes a huge difference. And as you say, I don't know if they have a problem with these things have been stolen or whatever, but some of them just look like pieces of metal that they've sort of salvaged from their workshop, that they've tied like a rag to. So yeah, certainly a 1 or 2 out of 10 for the flag sticks. Yeah, the second hole is I'm kind of in two minds about it. I think I prefer it to the seventh hole, the par three. It's very different when you play it on the back nine. So I think on the front you play from slightly more level to the green, and then on the back nine you play from quite a bit lower down. And yeah, in some ways when you play from quite low down, that's almost a more unique experience because it really feels like a blind shot. I think you can just see sort of the top of the flag, and it's not a long shot by any means. I mean, I think we were hitting gap wedges up there. Yeah, there is a backstop, but you don't get the benefit of, if you hit the backstop, you sort of doesn't necessarily roll all the way back onto the green. So exactly, yeah. So maybe a few tweaks on that slope where, at some point you get a nice kind of rollback, because based on, on the grass, on the greens, and the time of year, it can be very difficult to stop a ball, especially if you're hitting from below the green onto that. So you need to really hit it hard to get the ball to stop there. Of course, Jacques, still have nightmares about this hole when I played with you, because I don't know if you recall, but I got a serious case of the shanks. I think I hit.
I think we found some of your balls on the next hole, which is about 90 degrees right of where the par three is.
Yeah, I hit 2 cold shanks in a row, and I mean, everyone who plays golf will know that is pretty much the most unnerving experience in the world. I think the second was even more dead right than the first. Yeah. And I was actually ready just to walk it off. And I think you actually said to me, you said, listen, you've got to get this out your system. You've got to hit another one. And yeah, I got to say, I've never been so happy just to see a ball actually find the club face. So that was still sort of nightmarish stuff for me. Yeah, and then look, jumping straight onto that, it's not a very interesting green site, but what is nice about that green is that you start getting a glimpse for the third hole, which is ahead of you. And yeah, I'll be honest, this hole's definitely my favorite on the golf course.
I was just about to say that. I think certainly my favorite. Look, the blind tee shot, it's a very tricky tee shot, and one that you don't want to bite off too much, because you either bring in trouble or you could actually drive it far enough to catch the bank and go into the water, which I think I saw a couple of people do. Epic hole. I mean, it's a really good golf hole. I think what it doesn't benefit though from is just maybe the same. And look, any hole that you've got on this course, you've got a pretty amazing backdrop. But I think if that hole was facing the other direction, in the sense that you're playing back into the mountains with the same layout, I think it would be tough to beat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it still has some beautiful scenery around it. I think what I really like about this hole is the sense, and even if you've played it a couple of times before, there's a real sense of kind of uncertainty even after you've hit your tee shot. Having that blind kind of crest, it's and if you've never played the hole before, there's a real sense of anticipation of where you may have ended up and what the green site and that looks like. So it's a really, really neat hole, and yeah, if anyone wants to check out, we did a bit of a focus video on it, which is on our Instagram, or on the Instagram, That's Good Instagram account. Just kind of highlighting the hole. There's some very unique things to it. And then the tee shot, when you play it the second time, if you play it the next day or whatever, is also very different. You hit from about 30 or 40 meters to the left. And that means there's a lot more of an angle to where you're hitting. So you're sort of hitting over more bush, and it's even more unnerving.
Yeah, it's a properly daunting tee shot. If I mean, as you say, that tee shot that you hit, which is further left. I mean, you're pretty much starting it over terrain that you know that there is zero chance you're going to find your ball, and if you do, you could get bitten by a snake. But yeah, it almost feels like you're just hitting it into the shit, because you're hitting a
Yeah.
blind shot where you can't see over rough. But yeah, pretty unnerving. But I wanted to get your thoughts, Terence, on the green. I know we deal with like greenside bunkers and those little chocolate drops that they have on some of the sort of more linksy courses. What are your views of the greenside rock on this hole?
I think it's like one of the most epic like features I've ever seen on a golf hole. Honestly, I think it's so cool. Like whether that thing was there and they just couldn't move it, or it was just placed there during the excavation. I don't know. I would imagine probably the latter. But it's it's super unique, and I mean, I don't know if you recall, but when you and I played it the first time, I smacked the absolute middle of that rock,
Yeah.
and yeah, my ball just went sort of 90 degrees right, and it was a lost ball into the rough. So it was no, I love it. I think it's really cool.
So to give you the juxtaposition of that was I played with Matt the day after, and he hit the same rock, and almost the ball almost went in the hole. So it's a proper situation where it's like luck of the draw, sort of rubber the green.
Yeah.
Don't hit the rock, but you're spinning the roulette wheel if you're going to take it
Yeah.
take it off.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that's not undifferent to sort of bounces that you may get on a link style course where you've just got to accept the outcome, and to mitigate that, you need to just make sure you don't hit the rock, and it's not like it's a huge rock, but it's amazing how something like that like kind of gets in your mind. And if you're down the left hand side, like if you're in the left hand rough off the tee, it comes more into play, especially if the pin is at the back of the green. You basically have to hit over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you've played the hole before, you would know what we're talking about. It's and it's pretty obvious in the video that we did. It's very very interesting. I think the other interesting part of just going back to the fairway is that there's like a certain plateau on the fairway that you really want to find, and judging what club you need to hit off the tee is quite difficult. I remember when we played, I think you were a bit further up, and you had a much more difficult approach shot because the ball was like below your feet, and my ball had kind of gone down the hill a bit more, and I had like a much more level lie. So there's just a lot of uniqueness about this hole. And then the green site itself sort of sits up on this little hill where you have these awesome viewpoints of the river below you. It's a very, very unique like hole and green site. So yeah, I love it. It's a great hole.
Agreed.
Yeah. And then for me, it sort of starts the stretch of like the three best holes in my view on the course. Or maybe two of the three. Then the fourth, you sort of play now down, huge elevation change. You play down to this fairway below you where you have the river running right along the sort of edge of the rough. It sort of frames the hole. And there's quite a bit of water in play on this hole because you also have there's some sort of small dams that you hit over, but they aren't really in play. They probably only at about 180 odd meters. But running all the way down the right hand side is a lateral sort of canal hazard, and then at about I guess not far from where driver, if you hit a good driver, you have these three sort of ponds that they've built right in the middle of the fairway. So I guess they're sitting at maybe about 250 meters off the tee. I like this hole. I ended up the location of the green is incredible. It's right up against the river. It's got a couple of bunkers. This hole, I think it's the first bunkers that you see on the course. There's a bunker on the first as well. I must say, I from a design perspective, I think those three little weird pond things in the middle of the fairway aren't the most aesthetically pleasing things.
What do you mean? Like a wastewater treatment works?
Yeah. I don't know what. I guess this gets a lot of water coming down the hill, and there obviously used to be a natural drainage line here. But I just don't know why they had to build three. They look like very, very man-made. The golf course itself is in such this beautiful. The rest of the course is very carved into the natural surrounds, and those three little ponds just seem super artificial. It feels like something you would get at Springs Country Club or something. Little concrete pond. So I would have loved them just to have kept a nice little thin channel there. Stream, yeah, exactly. And with some rough around it, it would have been just from an aesthetic view, it would have looked better. But yeah, it's an interesting hole. There's if you go too far to the left, I discovered there's a tree which sits on the left-hand side in front of one of the ponds, which actually blocks you out from the green. So if you hit too much club off the tee, you can actually be a little stymied, which happened to me on one occasion. So it does have some interesting parts to it, but it's not a particularly difficult hole. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, I do think worth mentioning that this is certainly the time to pull out your camera and just have a snap on the tee box, because what was lacking on the sort of the background framing of the last hole, yes, you get an abundance on this hole. It's a seriously breathtaking view on that tee box, playing into the sort of the mountains.
Yeah, I mean probably the best on the course. Maybe only the ninth would be up there, but yeah, it's incredible. It's and the tee shots is because you're up at such a high. There's such a big drop. It's sort of one of those tee shots. The ball just looks like it's never going to stop going. Yeah. It's very cool.
Maybe your ball doesn't look like it's not going to stop going. I mean, you hit a cracker there. My ball, I was praying for it to go a bit further because I was get a shit after I held it.
Yeah. No, it's a awesome hole. And the green site is literally, I mean, 10 meters on the left is just big bank down to that river. So in the middle of summer, when we were there and that river is pumping, it's flippin' epic. You get that real sound of the water rushing off the berg. It's a really cool green site. Hey everyone, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit. This is not something we necessarily touched on in this podcast. For those of you who may not be familiar with South Africa, South Africa has a country, a separate country right in the kind of the Middle Eastern part of it called Lesotho. It's really a peculiar setup, but it's completely surrounded by South Africa itself. And the borders of this country are really defined by this enormous mountain range called the Drakensberg, which on the eastern side of Lesotho are particularly significant in their topography. This mountain range was, in folklore, is said to have been an inspiration for J.R. Tolkien when he wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien, incidentally, was actually born in South Africa, in Bloemfontein, which is a small city a couple of 100 kilometers to the west of Lesotho. Whether that folklore is true or not, when you see photographs of the mountain range, you will no doubt see why people may have drawn those comparisons. It's really a dramatic set of mountains. And this golf course, Cathedral Peak, sits right at the foot of those mountains, and it's kind of why we just think it's such an impressive place to play the game of golf with such beautiful scenery around you. It's around about a 4.5 hour drive from Johannesburg, or around 3 hours from the coastal city of Durban, which sits in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. So that's just a little bit on setting the scene of where this golf course is. And then something we touch on, and we go into a bit more detail, if you go to the website, that'sgood.co.za, we do a bit more of a deep dive in a post there on the golf course with some more video and photography of the golf course, and we touch on the architects as well. Just want to give them a shout out. We don't mention them in this podcast. The course was opened only in 1996, so it's really a very new course in the grand scheme of things in South Africa. And designed by Reg and Rowley Taylor, who did a combined effort. Reg Taylor was a prolific amateur golfer from South Africa. From what I understand, he never played professional golf, but over the course of between 1954 and 1970, he won the South African Open, the South African Amateur, the Belgian and German amateurs, the Canadian Amateur, and then lastly in 1970 he won the French Amateur. So not sure if we've had a champion who's won so many different amateur championships around the world. It's kind of a pity the British amateurs are on that list. But yeah, Reg Taylor was also involved in the design of quite a few other well-known golf courses around South Africa, and you can get into those details in our article on that'sgood.co.za. Back to the podcast. Yeah, the next hole for me, the fifth. What's this? Third, fourth, the fifth. For me, this is also
this hole that comes back along the fifth. It's a stroke one. I mean, it's long. It's a very tricky drive. You've got to play over the road. It's pretty narrow the whole way down. Again, one of those holes where I think you get it quite a lot on this course, where almost if you hit a long bad shot, you get less penalized than if you hit a short average shot. I mean, if you hit a little hybrid or an iron or something and you're just offline, you're going to land in all of that thick bush just on the right on the bank. But if you spray a drive, you've got sort of 3 fairways to miss on the next level up. And while you might have a blind shot coming back, you've got a shot. I don't know what you think about that. I mean, that seems to be a bit of a thing with this course, is that the small misses often bring you into more trouble than the big misses.
Yeah, it's certainly when you play this hole on the front nine, it's a really intimidating drive. It looks very narrow, with the bush all the way down the right, and then those sort of tall trees on the left, and anything left of those trees is essentially like meter high, like grass. You're basically gone. And then there's 2 sort of very well positioned bunkers, which are, at a distance that would capture many kind of average golf, like sort of handicap drive. I think they're roughly, just measuring here, they're at about 220 meters, those bunkers. So it is at altitude. So if you hit if you hit a good one, you should fly those, but they bring certainly they come into play without a doubt. And then it's not an easy second shot either. It's the green is well protected. You typically have a pretty long, like a long second in.
Yeah, this is also one of the few greens that you've got, Terence, on the course where it's not completely flat as a pancake. This green there is it can be a bit tricky. I think there's a bit of a ridge going through the middle. If I remember it correctly, with it sloping quite a lot at the back.
There is, yeah, and it is a little pushed up. So if you miss long or to the right, you sort of end up below the green, and you have kind of a difficult, especially if the pin's at the back. It's quite difficult to chip it back on and sort of stay on that tier. So I also found when we played this approach to the screen, it always seemed like it just one of those shots that just always plays longer than you thought. I don't know whether there's a prevailing wind or something, but it just always seemed like you needed an extra club to get it there. I think what was interesting is when you and I played at the second time on the back nine, the tee box sits up above the sort of tree line on the almost on the same level as the first fairway, and it's a bit further back, and it plays as a par 5. Is that right? On the back nine?
Mm-hmm. Possibly.
I think it does. I think it does, and I remember you and I both had very different. It was again a bit of like choose your own adventure, and you hit down to the fairway, the actual fairway, and I ended up deciding to hit my drive down the first fairway, sort of almost towards the 9th green, and was completely blind there. Had absolutely no clue where I was hitting, and just I had to sort of hit a layup towards the road and then on from there. So there's some options playing that hole. It's a good hole though.
I'm just having a look here and I'm just see from some of the notes that they've got 88 players that come and play club champs. Can you just appreciate how many guys must get clubbed by the balls, various balls when they're club champs, when there's 88 people playing on this golf course? I mean, you think about where that tee box is on that hole, and it's pretty much in the landing area for a lot of guys on the first that are teeing. And there's a number of holes like that. I mean, your 90-degree shank could easily have taken out someone that was looking to approach on the third. But I mean, I'd love to chat to someone who's come and played the club champs, and I don't know if they've got a running fine for all the guys that get smacked by other people's golf balls on this course. I mean, thankfully, when I played it, I think I've seen one other person playing it when I've been out there. So you're going to do well to avoid that one person's golf ball. But with 88 people around here, it must be a serious hazard. Especially,
around the 1st and the 8th and the 9th. I mean, it's basically one big driving range with a few trees in between it. So, and I touching on that, like I think one of my experiences of playing this course has been exactly what you said, where it's my favorite type of golf, where you're the only person on the golf course, which is another thing that I really love about playing here is, I don't think you and I saw anyone else out there when we were playing.
The other thing that you can, it's a perfect sort of place to, if you've got kids that are wanting to learn how to play, and because you're never really going to feel pushed by anyone. You're not sort of, I don't know how you would book a tee time. I mean, for the most part, it's sort of rock up and pay your fees and go play. And, you're not having to wear, collared shirts, tucked in, golf attire, the rest of it. I mean, you could quite easily, I think, come out here in a sort of, obviously not dressed like a chop, but it's a very relaxed atmosphere because there's not a ton of people on the course, if any.
No, completely agreed. I think it's a good place for, like, if you have got a good group of mates, you can sort of more or less do what you like out there. that's not speaking on behalf of the course management, but that's the feeling. That's the feeling that I get.
Well, like I said, the baboon poos got to me at the beginning before I realized that they were baboon poos. So maybe it was just a 10 ball out there just taking dumps all over the show.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for a course where you want to play like a 12-man skins game, like this would be up there. I would be surprised if they gave you any issues. It's far from a sort of lots of locals visiting it. The only people who are going to be playing here are essentially going to be any guests at the hotel and maybe at the sort of Didima resort down the road. So the next hole, Jacques, it's a bit of a walk. Start sucking a few big ones. You walk back up that hill to the sixth tee box, and again they vary this hole up between the front and the back just from a length perspective, but this is also a really great hole. You're now on like the top kind of plateau of the course, and the design here is they've done it in a way where you're heading at a diagonal across the fairway. So first time you're playing it, it's not 100% clear either what club you must take or your sort of line, because if you're hitting a 3-wood or a driver, you actually need to sort of hit basically over the left bushes.
Yeah.
So it's a really clever design, and so a lot of people end up down on the right, missing the fairway on the right. They hit through the fairway, and you have a bit of an awkward second then, because you'll have sort of off a slope, and there's a bunker kind of guarding that right side of the green. So it's you end up having to play a little left. There is a bit of a tier on the screen, so you can kind of use the slope there to bring the ball round, which is quite a fun kind of element as well.
No, it's a cool hole. I agree. It's another one of those where, if you take a driver and blow it right, the more distance you get, I think that it's not like it narrows towards the green. It probably opens up towards the green, and there's actually a lot more space right than you think. But then I think you are bringing in quite a tricky approach shot if you do decide to bail out right. But a lekker hole, as you say. I mean, it's one that's really tucked into the mountains, sort of wedged in between that valley there, and a really good hole. I mean, if you've managed to get through there without a heart attack, climbing up from the fifth, I pushed my cart up there. My goodness, I was like out of breath.
Yeah, and especially if you're playing in kind of the middle of summer, which is when we were playing. And I mean, we can get onto this because the course plays very differently between summer and winter. But I mean, we were playing in the middle of the summer, and I mean, it's not the sort of course where the fairways are being cut every day. And pushing a trolley through that long kind of thick summer grass is is a good workout. You get your vitality points clock up pretty quickly.
Well, considering the spread that you've got at the Cathedral Peak Hotel, that buffet, I think it's not a bad thing to pull a push cart out and burn off some of those calories. Cheap as is, just some serious chow, which I think it's like 3 course. Well, when I say 3 course, I mean buffet breakfast, buffet lunch, buffet supper. So I think you owe it to yourself to push a cart around there.
Yeah, and I mean that's jumping off the course quickly, but I mean, if you haven't stayed at the Cathedral Peak Hotel, you really have to do yourself a favor. And I think for me, this is one of the things that really makes this a great place to come and visit, because the hotel stay is just really special. It's an old school family hotel. I think it was built back in the 1930s, just before World War II. And it's got a huge amount of history, and they've sort of kept up the traditions of these family-style hotels. So you are not short of treated to just unbelievable food and activities and high teas and you name it. As Jacques said, you actually you have to force yourself to go and do the hikes and to play some golf in that because otherwise you're gonna come away with a net gain on the waistline. That's for sure. But would highly recommend staying at the hotel for a couple of nights.
Onto my next favorite hole, which is the one that you play back around the corner to the tucked out green. Was it you, Terence, or Matt, that hit this? This is on the 7th hole. That did a massive hook and ended up on the green, and then pretended like it was something that you had planned the whole time.
Well, I think you're skipping a hole now because we've still got the 7th, which is the big downhill par 3. So
you're right. Sorry.
Yeah. I said earlier that I preferred the other par 3 on this course. I got to be honest. I think the par 3s for me on this course are not, like, for me, they're not the strongest part of the course. I don't know what your thoughts are. It's a funny par 3 in that it's one of those very, very, very downhill par 3s, but which I don't mind. But what I guess I don't like about this one is when you have a nice downhill par 3 like that, it's nice to see the ball in full flight and actually see it land on the green. And in this hole, you don't really get to see where the ball ends up. It's kind of hidden behind the bottom of the hill.
Well, that's I think a legit criticism of both the par 3s is that you've got 2 par 3s where you don't actually, I think, witness the ball. So, I mean, if you were to get a hole in one on either of them, you'll only really know when you get up to the green.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I like a good downhill uphill par 3. I think it makes it quite nice. It's quite a tricky one to work out the yardage, which I always think is quite like for a par 3. So it's not straightforward. Okay, well, it's at 150, so it's a 7-iron or an 8-iron, and move on. It's 150, factor in the slope, factor in the wind, etc. There's a bit more to think about it with those elevated greens one way or the other.
Yeah, and what I will say is I think it plays better when you play it on the back nine with that tee that's sort of further up the valley. It's about 160 meters as a straight line, so it's probably playing maybe about 140.
Yeah.
And there's a huge downslope in front of the green, so your immediate thoughts are if you land short, you think, well, it's just gonna bounce and run on, but actually that's not the case. They keep the rough a little bit up there, which I actually quite like. It means you don't just, it doesn't all just funnel onto the green. You have to fly it like the right distance. It's one of the bigger. You've got to hit the right club, and it's when you play coastal golf like we do mainly, and then suddenly you're up at the Berg with a huge. I mean, I think the elevation change is like 30 or 40 meters. It's pretty bloody difficult to work out what that club change is. So it's a good challenge. Not as I say, it's definitely not my favorite, but it's unique compared to the other par 3. Getting on to the 8th hole now. So you were spot on, Jacques. So this is I think quite an interesting little par 4. It's essentially I guess it's a dog leg. I mean, the green is dog-legged hard off the fairway to the left. So you hit about 220 meters would get you sort of to the heart of the fairway, and then from there it's maybe a 60 or 70 meter shot, which is over a big dam, and you're at an angle to the green. So it's still a challenging approach. So what you were referring to was that when we played this hole, I pulled my drive pretty significantly, and went straight over the hill on the left rough, and was on a good line to the green. But I think we both assumed that it was not. It was going to be end up in the Schlatini. And we ended up walking up to the green, and we found it was just off the back edge of the green. So if you're, and look, I you're at altitude, and I'm not a short hitter, but I wouldn't say I'm the longest hitter by any means. So it's if you're playing in a match, maybe a better ball, and you've got a partner or someone who's in the middle of the fairway, it's certainly something that you can have a crack at. It's about 260 carry onto that green, but you've got to take it so far left, like uncomfortably left,
Yeah.
which is difficult to do. I mean, I don't really have any other strong thoughts on that hole. It's it's got a hazard all the way down the left hand side. It's probably a birdie. It's probably a birdie opportunity with the width of the fairway and the fact that you're going to be hitting a short wedge in. The green is very kind of uncomplicated, like most of them. So yeah, I would say there's definitely a birdie opportunity there. And then I don't know if you want to take us. Then again, you've got a nice little waistline trimmer of a walk up to the 9th tee.
Again, hoping that you're not part of an 88-man field, because I think that's more like running the gauntlets, trying to get up to that tee, because I think you're sort of dodging tee shots and approaches to get to the next box. But yeah, I mean, it takes you down sort of sandwiched between the 8th and the 1st fairway, to a famous centerline fairway tree, much like the greenside rock. I feel like that tree is more of a hazard in recent years than it was probably when it was originally put there. But yeah, it makes for an interesting shot, certainly, because you've got to get a bit of height to get it over there. But again, I think one that you can quite easily go left and right with, and possibly go further left or further right if you are going to go one of those directions. It's actually a pretty narrow fairway to hit if you're going to go and aim for the fairway you're meant to be hitting at. And then a pretty interesting green complex. They're pretty enormous bunkers in front of the green and one just behind. And yeah, I wouldn't say that these bunkers are super sort of fluffy, raked bunkers. They truly are hazards, both in the golfing sense and hazards if you've got some brand new irons, because I think they're probably going to have some scrapes on the bottom of them after coming out of which does make them avoid at all costs from a protect your equipment, but also they're not the easiest to get out of. But it's a pretty enormous green, and with quite a wide space off the fairway. You should be hitting that green, although it is a long hole, so you're generally taking a long iron in there. But once you're on the green, it's again quite a flat green, and one that it's a nice finishing hole with quite a long par 4 like that.
Yeah, this is it's again a spot that you're going to get your camera out up on those tee boxes, whether you're on the 9th or the 18th tee box, which is a little further to the left. But yeah, you're sitting up high above the fairway, and you've got these awesome views straight towards the berg. So it's a great one for a little shot tracer on your phone, something similar to that. I love the tree, like in the middle of the fairway. It's not really in play if you're hitting your driver kind of more than 200 meters, which I guess.
If anything, Terence, that tree for me is there to guard guys on the 1st and the 8th from just trying to use this fairway. I mean, it's that tree is more in play on those holes than on the 9th.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I guess if you've got a super low kind of maybe a bully ball flight, you could probably catch that tree. So I don't want to exclude people who've had like serious issues with that tree. I love it. I love it's kind of quirky. And the other quirky thing about the fairway is a bit further up on the fairway. There's again a big like clump of rocks, which is like. Yeah, I want to say about 60 or 70 meters out from the green, and they're sort of in the right-hand side of the fairway, just like this random pile of rocks, which is definitely in play if you hit a long drive or if you somehow end up with your second there. So, another little like quirky feature that I guess maybe they were just like, when they built the course, they were just like tired of moving rocks, and they just thought, let's just leave these ones here. And it's I took a couple of photos of it the other day when we were there. It's quite a fun feature. But if you're standing on the ninth tee, Jacques, the fairway, if you miss a fairway, then you've done really badly, I would say, because I've just measured now the you have a total width of 120 meters between the 8th, the ninth, and the first fairways. So if you happen to find yourself in the trees or in the rough, then you've done really badly, because you can really just go wild. And it must be absolutely hazardous during club champs.
Yes.
I don't know. Funnily enough, and this is where, from a design perspective, maybe I would have changed where the bunkers are in front of the green, because there isn't really any advantage to being straight down the middle of the fairway, because those two bunkers are tucked right in front of the green. So maybe if they'd been pushed out to the right and left, they would be more visually in your way if you were coming from the wrong fairways. But I've always battled to hit this green. I don't know what it is. I just I don't score well on this hole. It's not like it's a small green, but I seem to battle to find it in two. So quite a fun final hole. And then it sits right below the clubhouse, which is really cool.
Terence, have you been into that clubhouse?
Yes. Have you not?
So I have put my hand up. Maybe that's cuffing myself in terms of how many green fees I've paid. Anyone from Cathedral Peak listening, I'm happy to repay whatever green fees I owe, but it's never been open.
I think we put them on your room. We signed them out to your room. We expensed them. Don't worry.
But what is the clubhouse like?
No, it's really lacquer. I guess it just lacks because it's generally empty. There's literally the guy who works inside there, because the course is generally so quiet that any clubhouse where you don't have people and that it's not going to necessarily have the best atmosphere. But when I've played it the times previously, we've sat outside on tables outside overlooking the you've got the mountains in the distance, and then you're overlooking the ninth green. And then I remember previously sitting inside. They had a fire going inside. So I would imagine during the club champs, and maybe if you arrange I mean, this site is a great spot to do a big kind of golf tour. If you've got a golf school that's, I don't know, some people have 20 or 30 people in their golf schools. Yes, I reckon you would literally have your own private golf course here, because you could take over that clubhouse, get the fire going, get fire up. You would fire up a few pints in there. It's nice. I don't know if it will make it into the top 5 in Jacques' KZN halfway houses, but it's definitely a spot you could sit if you had a big group of people and sink a few ales. So yeah, it's certainly not a little caddy shack. It does have a little bit of ambience in it.
Okay, well, maybe just some final thoughts. I mean, I see it is ranked as on the KZN top 20 as number 23 on top 100 golf courses, and that's not number 23 in the top 100 of SA golf courses. That's number 23 in KZN.
Yes.
And I think it's fair. I think there's a lot of courses, obviously, that aren't ranked. And I think it is fair that Cathedral Peak is ranked. I think it's deserving of a ranking, because it is a lacquer layout. And, we've made some comments about, what we think and the rest of it. But I think it's important to keep in mind that, it's not Cathedral Peak Hotel is not there for the golf course. I think the golf course is there for guests who want to shoot out and play a round of golf. And with that in mind, I think it really is a lacquer little spot to go and hit a ball.
It really is, and it's not the sort of place that needs to have a golf course because there's so much else going on. But I'm really really glad that they do have one because it really just adds, like, being able to go out there, whether it's early in the morning or, as I say, in the afternoon, and maybe you play twice while you're staying there. Whether it's playing with like we did sort of before a work conference, or whether it's playing in a big golf school, or whether you trying to get your kids into golf, it's kind of perfect for all those scenarios. So for me, it's it's one of my favorites, probably one of my favorite 9-holders in KZN, and probably in the country as well, just because of where it's located. The only other thing I wanted to touch on was just how differently the course plays between summer and winter. In winter, I think the sort of absolute best time to play it would be around about May, sort of maybe late April, May. In summer, it is very, very lush, and I mean that mainly just in terms of the grass. Obviously, this is, get a huge amount of rainfall here, and it can be maybe a bit slow. I think in May, when it starts drying up a bit, you get sort of more firm and fast type conditions. I think the course becomes very, very interesting. So that if you are looking to play it, I would kind of recommend maybe that time of year. But really, any time of the year, you're going to have a good time here.
100%.
Just a last word of warning, though. If you do play it and you've sunk a few ales in the clubhouse, just be very careful when you're driving out and you have to cross the little bridge that takes you back to the hotel, because it is a concrete bridge with no barriers on the side, and it is literally the width of a car. I'd hate to see someone drive over the edge there after having a good day at the course, because you will end up a couple of kilometers downriver, regardless of what sort of vehicle you have. So the last little hazard when leaving the course is literally the bridge on the way out. JDV, this has been fun, man. I don't know what's. Have you got any suggestions for the next course we're going to cover?
Yeah, I think we need to give it some thought. But I think this was a good one to start with. Maybe we mustn't spend as long on each hole, otherwise it'll be 180-minute.
We might need to work on that. If you are still listening, we apologize for the stroke by stroke breakdown, but maybe it just talks to our enthusiasm of the course. We'll endeavor to try and cut them down to like 40 minutes maybe. But this has been good fun, man. Maybe Mdoni might be the next course that we cover. I think it's got a special place in a lot of people's hearts. So we will chat to you the next time on Carl Hoffman's favorites podcast, The Goat Track.
Like a Terence, and that's the drilling to play me out.
All right, dude. Cheers.